This is Facility Science Podcast number 11. I am Jason Doolittle, and today I'm talking about QR codes and how we can use them in facility management. And this is a quality of life improvement that's very simple to implement as long as you have access to the internet and basic office equipment and a smartphone. So first, what's a QR code? A QR code is a two-dimensional barcode originally designed for use in the automotive industry in Japan, and they're designed to have a higher data density than a regular one-dimensional barcode, so the kind of thing you'd see on a product you're going to go buy in a store somewhere, and also to be easily readable and decodable by a computer. And basically, you've seen these things before. It's a square of little black and white checkerboard-looking squares, and you've seen them before on advertisements or signs or products. They're kind of all over the place now. And these QR codes can encode letters and numbers that can then be read and acted on very quickly by some type of computerized device. And pretty much all of our modern smartphones, our mobile devices, have the capability to read these. So any modern Apple or iOS phone or device or any Android device, and I don't know if Microsoft still makes phones. I don't know if they do, but if they do, they can probably read QR codes too. And for our purposes in facility management, we can use the QR codes to encode a URL, basically a website address, and then take advantage of the capability of the smartphone to read the URL from the QR code and then direct the phone to the website or other resource indicated by the URL. So what can we use QR codes specifically for in facility management? The basic idea is that we can put the QR codes in various places throughout our various facilities, and then have the QR code send our mobile device to whatever information will be most useful in the context of that place. So a few examples of that: we can print the QR code onto labels to tag our various devices and equipment to provide context-relevant information for our maintenance personnel. So this could be things like our CMMS pages or manuals or drawings and diagrams, whatever resource or whatever sort of web-connected portal we might have for information about the maintenance of our equipment. We can point the QR code to that resource. And so the maintenance personnel could have easy access to not only the documentation needed to do their work, but in the case of pointing this to a CMMS page, they could potentially have access to the work orders and the history associated with the piece of equipment without having to carry around a bunch of paper or otherwise do a whole bunch of work to try to access that information that they need in the field. We can also print the QR code onto signs or labels and put them in places where we want the building occupants to have access to some information or to take some action. So maybe we can put the QR code on a sign in a restroom or a meeting room or some other place that people are going to use, and the QR code could take the user to maybe a maintenance request page or some type of feedback portal. And if you're a property manager, you can do the same thing in the leased buildings or in rented residential units. So basically, you do this anywhere someone is likely to want to make a maintenance request or give feedback, and you want them to do that in this place, and you want them to do so in a certain specific way. And so the QR code can direct them directly to that way. And if for whatever reason you collect your maintenance requests or other feedback via email or phone call, that's no problem. You can set up the QR code with an email link or a phone number, and our modern smartphones will happily open the email application and load the email address that you put in the QR code, or even allow the user to dial the phone number that you want them to dial because you have that built into the QR code. And then maybe there's some context where the user of the facilities might need some instructions or other documentation. So a QR code can link to, for example, the instructions for the AV equipment in the meeting room, or how to use the swimming pool area or the workout room or whatever place that a user might be where they might need some information or some instructions. You can use a QR code to point them to that. We can also add QR codes to documents to allow easy access to additional copies of the document or maybe the most recent version of a document. So I like to use this for things like forms or checklists or log sheets where, even in the sort of modern internet age or whatever, there are still situations where we have to print out the log sheet or the checklist or whatever and fill it in and put it in a binder somewhere to satisfy some kind of reporting requirement. And so what I like to do is in those situations have a QR code in the corner of the log sheet or whatever it is, and that way you don't have to sort of dig around to try to, where's that sheet? I don't know where. You just go to the binder, scan the barcode on the binder or on the sheet inside the binder, and get immediate access to the sheet that you can print out or whatever you need to do. Also, again, you can have a more updated version accessible by the QR code. You don't also have to, you chase down a blank one and make copies of it, and after a couple of years you have 15 levels of copy and the thing looks terrible and you're not proud of it or whatever. So those kind of things. Another thing I like to put a QR code on is floor plans or other drawings where you might have reason to sketch on them for some reason, to demonstrate something to somebody, or maybe you're planning some kind of a change or whatever, and you have like a single sheet floor plan that you make notes on or draw ideas on, and you can give that to someone and have a QR code on there. So if they want another copy because they want to do some drawings on it or whatever, they can go ahead and scan that QR code, bring that document up on there, or that drawing up on their device, print it out again if they want to, maybe just draw on it on their device. And then if your floor plan changes, you can just, replace the document with the more updated version, and anyone who scans the older version QR code can get the newer version of the document. So basically any kind of documents like this, when you're making the document, add a little QR code that points to wherever sort of online place that document is stored, so that whoever needs to get that document later on can get it just by scanning the QR code. And a good idea where it's practical, it's not always practical, but where it is practical, is to include the URL or the email address or whatever that the QR code points to on the sign or label, possibly maybe under the QR code, like the text of it. So that if for whatever reason they don't have a mobile device with them, or they don't know how to, or for whatever reason can't or don't want to scan the QR code, they can still access the resource manually by typing in the web address or dialing the phone or putting the email address in manually. Okay, so how do we do this? It's possible your CMMS provider, if you have a CMMS provider, has QR code capability built in. And if they don't, they might be able to help you set it up. Or if your organization has an IT staff that does any kind of coding or development, or an operations team that does some kind of product or parts or inventory tracking, they can probably help you make QR code labels or QR code to put on signs or whatever. And if you don't have a CMMS provider that can help you with this, and nobody inside your business does this kind of thing, you can pretty simply make your own QR code labels or signs. You just search online for a QR code generator. And there are a lot of them out there, and they'll have a place on the website to enter your URL, the link to whatever you want your QR code to bring the user to, and they'll then generate the QR code image, and you download that and you print that on your label or add it to your document or sign or whatever you need to do. And some of them offer what they call dynamic QR codes. I'm not sure I would recommend using that, at least without really checking into the company behind that service first. And the main issue I have with them is that we can't necessarily guarantee they'll continue to provide the service later. So you put a bunch of time into using their dynamic QR codes, and a couple months later they close down and none of your QR codes reach where they're supposed to reach anymore. And also for some of them, it might be hard to tell if they're going to use your data appropriately. So I didn't explain what I mean by a dynamic QR code is, instead of putting a link to your resource that you want to reach in the QR code, they put a link to something on their system, which then will forward you to the destination you actually want to reach. And so I wouldn't necessarily recommend using that capability provided by the QR code generating websites or whatever, unless you really check into them and make sure that they're going to actually be able to provide the service you need. And that then gets into the idea of using a redirecting service like this, and also using URL shorteners. So as sort of an extra bonus step in this process, I like to use a redirection service or a URL shortener. And the idea is that instead of making your QR code with the URL of the destination you want to actually reach, like I was talking about the dynamic links that some of the QR code services provide, you put the URL of a service that will then redirect the phone to the proper URL. And the main benefit of this is that if you want to change the resource pointed to by the QR code, you don't have to replace the label or the QR code on the label or the sign or whatever. You just keep that there, and you reconfigure the redirection on the back end in your redirection service for that QR code at the redirection service. Another benefit is that you can have utilization analytics for each different QR code sign or label, even if they link to the same place. So you might maybe be linking to some maintenance request page from multiple different places, but you're linking to the same page. If you have a different URL in each QR code, you can tell, how often somebody scans the one in each different place. And in many, maybe even most cases, a redirecting service will also act as a shortening service, and some with the intent to make the URL as short as possible. And so if you think about, if you're going to link into your CMMS, the link to a particular asset, maybe a really long, nasty looking address. And so that the QR code that's going to require to hold that long of a string of text characters is going to be pretty large. And also it's not going to be something that you want to write underneath that your user, well, first, it's not going to look good on the sign if you write it out in case someone can't scan the QR code. It's also going to be very difficult for someone to type in. So if you can get that URL as short as possible with a shortening redirection service, then that'll be more convenient to use. So a shorter URL means that the QR code can be smaller. You can put it on a smaller object, right? So on a tool or a mobile device or in the white space on the corner of a document. And also maybe you could have it readable from a longer distance away, because with a smaller QR code, a QR code that takes fewer little squares to represent your data, because you use a smaller address to put in the QR code, each individual little square will be larger at a given print size, right? Say in inches or centimeters. And so you can read that with your smartphone from further distance away. And there are commercial link redirection and URL shortening services that you can use for this. They have different levels of service and features, but it's also pretty easy to set one up in-house. So if you have a person or a team in your business that maintains, for example, websites, it would be pretty easy for them to set up such a mechanism in-house. And I use a package called URLs. It's YOURLS. And it's basically a free package that acts as a URL shortening and redirection service that you can download and install in your own server. And it's really worked great for me. So what if you don't have a fancy CMMS, or maybe you're just getting started and you don't have any type of maintenance management or contact management or any kind of organized work reception or any of this sort of IT infrastructure is set up to manage your maintenance, asset maintenance or documents or work orders or whatever. First of all, you should make setting that up very high priority. But you can still gain the benefits of QR codes even if you don't have all of that. Right? So you can start collecting your maintenance information and documentation in something like Evernote or Google Docs or some free service in the meantime. You can start gathering, and then point your QR codes to that. And you can also start organizing your work reception by posting QR codes with email or phone numbers in them. And then directing people to use those rather than, say, telling you when they see you in the hallway or telling one of your maintenance staff verbally when they walk by them, say, hey, well, scan that QR code over there and send an email. So that way you have in the QR code the email they need to send their request to, or even the phone number they need to call, so that they don't have to make a bunch of effort to find it. But again, you can gain the benefits of the QR code concept without necessarily having your whole IT infrastructure around your management, your facility management organization all set up. So like I said, this is a quality of life improvement. No matter where you are as far as sophistication goes in your facility management organization, you can get the benefits of this quality of life improvement, and it's pretty simple to set up. All right, I think that's about all I have to say about QR codes for now. You can find my notes for this topic at facilityscience.com, and this is number 11. If you have any questions or comments about this topic, or maybe suggestions for other topics that you would like to hear me cover, you can reach me by email at podcast@facilityscience.com. And if you like this podcast and you want to help me keep making it, head over to facilityscience.com/support and see if any of the support options there appeal to you. And I hope this podcast is helpful to you, and thanks for listening.